Hey guys, welcome to Star Wars Timeline. Today I'd like to talk about fan opinions. I think it's very good to have a healthy debate, to have differences and share our thoughts and ideas, but oftentimes we as fans argue and bicker and misunderstand each other, so I wanted to bring this topic to light to engage you guys in a conversation. I'll propose my three versions of different Star Wars fan opinions, and you let me know in the comment section below what are your interactions like with your Star Wars community, whether you chat with people via social media or you have close friends or family that you interact with daily. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for checking out my channel. I always appreciate your kind and warm input. I wouldn't be here without you guys. If you enjoy my videos, please consider subbing, doing all that YouTube channel, hit the bell button so you don't miss our future discussions. Without further ado, let's get into it. First, to summarize, obviously Star Wars, it's a giant franchise. It spans over 40 years. It has accumulated a lot of expanded universe material. We have a lot of different authors who helped George Lucas as a creator to expand upon this universe. You know, from Alan Dean Foster's original expanded universe novel, A Splinter of the Mind's Eye, to Timothy Zahn, to Kevin J. Anderson, to most recently Deborah Chow and her Obi-Wan Kenobi show. There's a lot of different cooks in the kitchen who over the years helped build this franchise. And it goes without saying, it's a global phenomenon, right? And we see that fans across generations, different cultural backgrounds, and even religious beliefs come into this franchise and find something special and meaningful for themselves. And I understand as fans, which I'm being a part of, we sometimes get very passionate, we're highly opinionated, and we argue because our interactions are more often than not very brief. Whether it's on social media or you come across somebody, let's say in the bookstore, in a comic book shop, usually our exchanges are very brief and our opinions come off as basic statements. This is so, and the other person immediately presumes that that opinion can't be altered and can't be anything else than that. And this is where the immediate response is, well, hold on a second, let me counteract. I think you're wrong here. Let me add my own 2 cents to this discussion. And obviously we have our own biases, but let me introduce you 3 different types of opinions that we might have. And I think they're all legitimate, that we all have the rights to have them. And the more we understand them, the more Star Wars fandom can come together and we can appreciate each other. We can still disagree like I do on my podcasts. A lot of times I disagree with a lot of my guests, but it's interesting to compare notes and see where the person is coming from. So the first type of opinions that I believe we can have is an informed opinion. It's based on your personal time invested reading and learning all about Star Wars, right? And it's kind of information that is verifiable from both ends, pro or con. You know, you draw information from Star Wars, obviously the original 9 films, you have the TV shows, you have novels, you have comic books, but you also have source books, which I personally have not delved much into, but my understanding is if you want to know specific character stats or who ranks higher in his force abilities and so on, there's a lot of West End RPG video tabletop games that kind of go very deeply into it and explain a lot of information to you. So let's bring an example of this sort of informed opinion. Let's say we take The Last Jedi and we discuss the character of Luke Skywalker. Here is one side of the argument. Luke Skywalker is a coward, and he would never abandon his friends. Do I agree with it? Maybe not, but it's a legitimate opinion. So what is it based on? How can this be true? First, we know that in the expanded universe of Star Wars literature, Luke always stays by his friends. He always helps out in every major conflict, or at least where you see Han, Leia, and Luke being represented as the heroes of that particular story. Luke always is there to confront the challenge. For example, one of my favorite books that I've started reading my Star Wars with is Kathy Tier's The Truce at Bakura, right? It literally takes place after Episode 6, and Luke charges in the forefront of action, and he's there to help out his friends. Now, some of you guys may say, well, this is Legends. It's not true anymore. We only have canon. Well, hold on a second. Before we got Star Wars canon, we had 40 plus years of the expanded universe. And a lot of us fans, including myself, who has been reading this literature for over 20 years, we sort of shape our minds and our opinions based on this character from the information that came before. Once upon a time, this was canon. Once upon a time, this was true Star Wars. As I mentioned before, regardless where Luke is being regarded, he always is in the center of events. Even the book series, the trilogy, the Jedi Academy trilogy, in one of these books, Luke confronts the challenge, but he's out of commission for a while. He's put into this coma by this ancient Sith. And Luke doesn't cower from the challenge. He's just incapacitated, and it's his student, his disciples, who need to answer the call and act on his behalf. And only at a later point, he comes back swinging and he helps his students. But the counter argument is to that same perspective that Luke is a hero and he would never run, also happens in the Star Wars expanded universe. I'm talking about the Legends, where if you take the graphic novel of Shadows of the Empire, well, hold on a second, let's challenge that opinion for a second. Luke Skywalker lands on this throne world. Back then, it wasn't even called the Coruscant, the seat of power of the Emperor. And he encounters a Palpatine's evil clone, right? And he's still strong in the Force, and he tempts Luke's with his powers and knowledge. And if you read that a graphic novel, we're still talking about Legends, Luke sort of kind of abandons his friends. Granted, for a different reason, because he believes he should tackle this very dire situation on his own. Still, he confronts Han and Leia and he tells them, I need to do this alone. Leave me alone. I gotta do this. So in a way, he also abandons his friends. So while it's a very informed and verifiable information that we can list from book to book, as you guys can see, I have a lot of legend books behind me. You could say that Luke was a hero and he never runs. But alternatively, he also kind of does sideline his friends at one point. But let's look at the other side of this argument from let's say from a modern perspective, or from the perspective of the fans of the Last Jedi movie like myself. You could say that, hold on a second, let's look at the film itself. The Last Jedi movie, whether you like or dislike the information there, the source itself provides you with explanations why Luke is not a coward and why he doesn't run away. For example, we understand that Luke Skywalker, via flashbacks, that he reestablishes the Jedi Order, right? The promise that he made to Yoda at the end of the Return of the Jedi, he would pass on what he has learned. And he does exactly that. We also know that the Empire was defeated at the end of Episode 6. So on that account, Luke Skywalker also fulfills his promise. And we know that he stayed with the heroes for a limited amount of time, because before, obviously, he goes into exile. So Luke fulfills all of that criteria of a hero. And he trains the new generation of Jedi Knights, including Ben Solo, until the point that his nephew betrays him and destroys everything that Luke Skywalker has built. Yes, obviously, we understand that Luke becomes very broken, very cynical, and he leaves. But does he do it because he was a coward and he's unwilling to fight? Well, once again, you may dislike this interpretation or this information, but you can't discard it because it's in the movie. And it's as follows. We see Luke Skywalker first being confronted by Rey and saying, what do you think would happen? I would just take a laser sword and go challenge the entire First Order myself? Well, he still comes back and becomes this icon that instills hope in all of the galaxy that people knew Luke Skywalker as. He comes back, he gives the Resistance an opportunity to leave and escape danger by confronting Ben Solo and the First Order and distracting them. And he does it in what some would argue is the most noble Jedi way, without attacking his nephew, but distracting him. And like it or hate it, at the end of that film, the Resistance is still alive. It has that chance, that window of opportunity, because Luke Skywalker is there. So once again, I'm not to say which opinion is right or wrong, but I think it's totally valid and information-based to say, A, Luke is a coward, he abandons his friends, and thus I dislike this movie. But it's equally right to say, no, I think he's a hero, he does come back, and he saves his friends. Again, it is all opinion. At the end of the day, informed or not, it's still going to be an opinion based on which information you relate to, which kind of information is more dear to your heart, whether it's Star Wars Legends and you enjoy those books and that vision of Luke Skywalker, or whether it's the Last Jedi movie and this very different kind of take on Luke Skywalker and taking a hero and dismantling him from ground up and giving him a new kind of like challenge or new demons to fight with, his personal demons, his misgivings, and his loss of hope, which this young woman comes in and she brings a hope back to Luke Skywalker. The second kind of opinions I think exists in Star Wars fandom is biased opinions. And they basically express preference based on aesthetic and comparison to other stuff or media that we watch. For example, if you look at the Battle of Geonosis in Attack of the Clones movie, fact is, it's all digital, right? It's all CGI effects. The clone troopers are CGI, the droids are CGI, and the landscape itself, Geonosis, it's also CGI. Now, I also understand there were some sets built for the arena, but I'm talking about that battlefield section of it, right? Where the clones go in and the smokes are blowing and you see laser shots being exchanged and all the heavy artillery and the machinery are all there. That's all digital. That's a fact. Now, and it's an aesthetic that a lot of fans enjoy, and they say, well, look, computer graphics is as much of art as building prop models, and I enjoyed it as much as anything else. And then you take something completely different. For example, the original 1990 Stargate movie, or something more recent like the Dune movie, which uses real extras, actual hundreds of people on screen running around, and performing actions, and also real life sets and real locations. Now, both are factual, right? One is real, one is digital. Those are two different aesthetics. And you could say, you know what, I don't like the CGI because it doesn't look too believable for me, or it's too busy, or too many things are happening all at once. Like, for example, I've heard opinions that the first introductory sequence in Revenge of the Sith, a lot of people dislike it because all of the spaceships that are in Coruscant's orbit are too busy. There's too much happening on one screen, and people say, well, I just feel that it's aesthetically not very pleasing. It could have been a little bit better thought out, and so on and so on. So this is a biased opinion based on aesthetic. You look at something and you either like it or dislike it. And I don't think it is that easily disproved. You can't approach a person and you say, well, your opinion is wrong. This aesthetic is beautiful. It's a very personal choice. For example, I think opera is beautiful, but I don't go out and see it. I think Broadway shows are amazing. I don't go and watch them because I'm personally not interested in them. This is my personal opinion-based bias, and nobody can say otherwise. Another comparison I wanted to make in regards to biased opinions are obviously the fights, right? Those are big points of contention amongst fans. For example, when we see in Star Wars Rebels, the show, where Obi-Wan Kenobi fights Darth Maul. And some fans would say, it's too short. But other fans like myself say, no, it's perfect, it's ideal. Both can be very, very valid, but where are fans coming from? This is the whole point of this podcast, like to try to understand and parse what is the thought process here? What angle each fan is arriving from? So, for example, you could say that a fan watched a lot of traditional kung fu movies or martial art films, like with Jackie Chan, or the more recent The Raid Part 1 and 2, and you enjoy those prolonged epic fights, right? I think both battles in the Raid 1 and Part 2, they are minutes long. I think Part 2 it goes on above 5 minutes. Nothing but crazy action happening, and this is where the thrill and excitement is for some fans, and this is what they enjoyed. So when they look at something like Kenobi fight, of course the aesthetics and the decision-making that Dave Filoni puts into that a duel is completely different. So I understand why some fans, it's boring. It was so anticlimactic. I didn't enjoy it. But then again, you have a different kind of fan who watches a lot of Asian cinema, for example, or even Westerners, right? Western cinema, when you see all those Clint Eastwood nameless hero films, there's a quick draw and you shoot the other guy. So you could argue that this Kenobi versus Maul fight is very much a Western kind of duel. Or if you watch a lot of samurai flicks, right, Akira Kurosawa films or otherwise, you see two samurai having this standoff, and then it's one quick draw, somebody unsheathes their katana, it's one slash, and it's over. And that's the epic moment there to show you, to demonstrate how powerful one individual is versus the other. Obviously, this is what I personally feel Dave Filoni was going for that Obi-Wan Kenobi is much more seasoned and experienced fighter spiritually, but also technically, that he's able to see Darth Maul's movements from a mile away, and he said, he's fighting exactly the way he was fighting in the Phantom Menace. I got him. I'll kill him. Once again, both opinions could be equally valid as long as you understand where both fans are coming from and say, well, I prefer more kind of these type of films of this aesthetic, or I prefer something different. Another duel is Rey versus Palpatine at the end of The Rise of Skywalker. Some might find it very exciting. I personally found it boring. Let's take a look at both different opinions here. Where could fans possibly be coming from? One thing you could say, once again, coming back to martial arts or medieval historical pictures, right? For example, take Braveheart or Gladiator or Troy, all of those epic movies that have a lot of great duels there. And you would say, hold on a second. How come we saw Palpatine fight with a lightsaber before, right? Why couldn't he just jump butterfly twist out of his throne and challenge Rey? And let's test her abilities versus his. And that would be an ultimate fight that I've been waiting for all these years, and it would completely justify the sequel trilogy, and I would have been in heaven. But because that doesn't happen, I dislike it. Right? Once again, you're looking at it something that is aesthetically different from what you were looking for, and obviously you're going to dislike it. And this is where I understand it, and I don't scratch my head and say, what do you mean? I don't understand where you're coming from. Say that again, please. I understand where fans are coming from. On the other hand, you might be a fan of Harry Potter or Doctor Strange. That I loved the original Doctor Strange Marvel movie, where he uses a lot of these different techniques and tricks, and he draws circles in the air, and that's how he fights, with magical abilities, where physically he doesn't touch anybody unless he's like telekinetically throws somebody, right? It's all done through magic and gestures, and I felt it was very innovative and interesting. I haven't watched a lot of Harry Potter movies aside from part 1 and 2, so please forgive me if I'm completely wrong here, but my understanding is that a lot of challenges and fights happen via having your magic wand, right? And you make incantations and name your spells, and you fire those spells off towards your opponent. That's what basically you could interpret the final challenge between Palpatine and Rey be, because she crosses her lightsabers and she says, well, if you are all Sith, I'm all Jedi, and I'm gonna go at you. So it's like a contest of powers. There are two beams, like Kamehas in Dragon Ball Z, and one source is trying to overpower the other one. That's what that is. I'm pretty sure they're fans of that particular duel. Please, guys, let me know in the comment section below if you adore that final confrontation, if you really enjoyed it. I could totally see how fans liked it. Anyway, that gives you an idea on the biased opinions. And the last one I would like to discuss, which is to me the most fascinating one, and that makes Star Wars such a relevant franchise to this day, is interpretation, which I think is a form of opinion. And it's basically every story, whether it's a short form or whether it's a full novel or whether it's a television series, doesn't matter the length, it leaves room for interpretation. Think of a Lego set that you just purchased. For argument's sake, let's make it easier, a new Star Wars Kenobi set, right? It definitely comes with a manual and instructions and tell you how many pieces are there. That's what the blueprint for every good story is, the manual, how this thing should look at the end, right? But it's up to the person or a child or an adult who's putting it all together. That's what makes it fun and interesting, because you're engaging with the material. If you take out your Lego box set and you unbox it and the snap of the fingers and it just assembles itself, what's the fun in that? Nobody would enjoy it. Like, it does everything or a video game. You start a video game and it's like, I don't think I want to play it. Start, and the game is going to start playing itself. Now, I know I don't mean to offend all of the fans who are going on YouTube and just watch playthroughs. That's all fun and everything. But just for my argument, if you're a gamer yourself and you play, you wouldn't want the game to play itself, right? You want to beat it. You want to challenge yourself and get to that final boss and see that sweet and cinematic. That's what makes it exciting. Same with storytelling. It is best when it leaves It gives you just enough information to understand what the story is, to understand what the character is. That's the manual. But then you fill in all the gaps and you make it your personal experience. For example, one of obviously the biggest topics in Star Wars, what is the Force? I literally just made a meme before I started recording this video that I threw on my Facebook Star Wars group. What is the Force? We obviously have a brief summary and description of it in the original film. You don't need to look at any exterior materials other than A New Hope. Obi-Wan Kenobi explains to Luke Skywalker how it functions, the basic bare bones mechanics of it. Obviously, it gets extended a little bit further in Empire Strikes Back, where Yoda tells him more kind of like a lived-in experience of saying, this is what this larger-than-life phenomenon is. It penetrates and it lives in everything, whether it's a droid or a human being or a tree or a rock. It resides in all of us. But it doesn't give you a final definition of what the Force is. And that's the beauty of it. The rest of it, we fulfill with our imagination. If you practice Buddhism, you might have one outlook of it. There's kind of like a form of reincarnation that after your physical body is extinguished like clay, it's no longer there, your body, your soul travels in, and whatever experience you've accumulated throughout your life, it goes back to the source, and then you're reincarnated. And basically your behavior, whether you were a good person or a bad person, you're reincarnated perhaps as a Sith or a Jedi. And once again, I think it's totally fair to sort of shelf the information that exists in all the source materials and all the encyclopedias and give it your own interpretation. It's totally valid. It's all fiction after all. It's all fake. You know, you can't say that it's like a Dragon Ball Z power that you shoot out of your hands, but at the same time, you could still give it attributes that kind of make sense to you. I hope I'm making sense here, guys. But also for somebody who, let's say, is a Christian, right? A lot of fans describe Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, as a reincarnation of the spirit, right? He's a Christ figure. He's the one who suffers for the sins of the galaxy, and through his children, Luke and Leia, he restores balance in the Force. That also could be a very valid, a very reasonable kind of explanation. And I don't think interpretation is so personal that you can't come into a podcast or come into a dialogue and start counter-arguing it. Because a lot of it is such an intimate relationship to these characters and to the story, and you would need to sit down and try to understand that person's worldview, his philosophy, his inner feelings, his character, his emotions, everything. There's so much involved here that you can't resolve here a basic, let's sit down and have debates with pros and cons kind of cards, and at the end of it give results. It's not that simple. Or another interpretation could be not necessarily philosophical like the Force. Let's take the character of Hondo Ohnaka, right? Is he a friend or is he an enemy? He obviously does some bad stuff in the Clone Wars show, right? He imprisons Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin, and he intends to sell them back to the Jedi Council. That doesn't qualify as a good thing. That's definitely a bad guy behavior, right? But then in other parts, he helps them, right? When they hunt Darth Maul, I believe. Please correct me again. I need to rewatch the Clone Wars show. But he sort of kind of doesn't stand in their way. And later on, in the Rebels show, he also helps Ezra Bridger. And at the end of the day, he pats Ezra Bridger on the shoulder saying that, hey, I do it for myself. I got to look after myself. After all, I'm an opportunist. That's kind of the front that he puts. But there are also allusions there that he sees everything that's wrong with his galaxy, the empire that rose to power. And he decides to act and selflessly and to help this young hero. But once again, we look back and he acts as a villain and a pirate when he attacks that innocent village, right? And all the bounty hunters are challenged to protect the village against him. And of course, our hero comes in swinging, and they also help out the villagers. So is he necessarily a good guy or a bad guy? Maybe it's a combination of both. And I think the beauty of the character is that he leaves room for interpretation. I very much believe that the writers created him with that in mind, that the audience can look at him and say, well, hold on a second, there's layers to this guy. You know, at one point he's a good guy, at another point he's a bad guy. He hasn't committed anything that I would say qualifies as a total atrocity. irredeemable. Like, oh my God, you know, what has he done? He needs to be punished for this. But at the same time, he's not necessarily an all-loving being who would go out of his way to help everybody. He still looks after himself even when he's helping Ezra. Again, that's the beauty of the character. Anyway, guys, we covered 3 different sets of opinions here, all in effort for me to try to understand the fandom, for fans to try to come together and see all these different angles that we come from, and try to appreciate the fact that sometimes we just need to sit down and have a good conversation. And it's not about winning an argument. It's not about coming out on top and saying, well, see, I was right. You see, that person is wrong. Obviously, we know what an X-Wing looks like, and we all know that Yoda is green. But there's such a great portion of Star Wars which is open for interpretation and arguments and counter-arguments. I think the fun of it is sitting down and having a chat with friends and saying, wow, this is how you see it? That's pretty interesting. I do it a lot with Josh from Star Wars on High. I do it a lot with Michael from Genuine Chit Chat and so forth. We all sit down and we have a good conversation with each other. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, please let me know in the comment section below. What do you think about fan opinions? How do you approach other fans? How do you talk to them? And are there times when you get upset, when you feel misunderstood, when other people try to discredit your opinion and so forth? I would like to hear all about it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. Hit that bell button so you don't miss my future podcasts. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.